What Iran had already planned everything, Trump made a big mistake. The catastrophic miscalculation unfolding in the Middle East exposes a fundamental truth that American strategists have repeatedly failed to grasp despite decades of evidence. Iran has spent 47 years preparing for exactly this confrontation, while the United States has spent those same decades assuming that superior firepower automatically translates into strategic victory. As American bombs fall on Iranian cities and Iranian missiles strike targets across the entire region, the uncomfortable reality is becoming impossible to ignore. Iran anticipated every aspect of this conflict. Iran prepared contingencies for every scenario. Iran built infrastructure specifically designed to survive precisely the kind of assault now being conducted. Donald Trump's decision to launch this war, far from demonstrating American strength, has exposed the limitations of American power and walked directly into a trap that Iranian strategists laid decades ago. Hey everyone, I'm Michael Harris, geopolitical and military analyst, and you're watching my channel. What I'm about to share reveals how Iran's meticulous preparation over generations has positioned it to survive and potentially prevail against the combined military might of the United States and Israel, and why Trump's decision to launch this assault represents one of the most consequential strategic blunders in American history. Before we examine the full scope of Iranian planning and American miscalculation, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment with your thoughts as we go through this together. Now let's look at the reality beneath the propaganda. The foundation of Iranian strategic planning rests on a recognition that has guided Tehran's defense doctrine since the devastating Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. Iran cannot match American conventional military power in any direct confrontation. American aircraft carriers, stealth bombers, precision-guided munitions, and technological superiority across every domain make conventional military competition futile. Iranian strategists understood this reality decades before most Western analysts gave them credit for such sophistication. Rather than attempting to compete where they could not win, Iran developed an entirely different approach to national defense, one built on asymmetric warfare, dispersed capabilities, strategic depth, and the cultivation of regional allies who could extend Iranian influence and complicate any American military campaign. The centerpiece of Iranian defensive preparation is the network of underground missile facilities that Iran calls its missile cities. These are not merely hardened bunkers or protected storage facilities. They are vast underground complexes, some extending 500 meters beneath mountain ranges, connected by thousands of kilometers of tunnels, designed to ensure that Iranian retaliatory capability survives even the most intensive bombing campaign. Iranian officials have stated that these facilities exist in every province and city throughout the country. The most powerful American bunker buster bombs can penetrate approximately 60 meters of concrete. Iranian missile cities are built at depths that render them essentially invulnerable to any conventional weapon in the American arsenal. The only weapons capable of reaching such depths would be nuclear, and the use of nuclear weapons against Iran would trigger consequences that even the most hawkish American planners cannot accept. The significance of this underground infrastructure became evident during the 12-day war of June 2025, when Israel exploited airspace over Iran to strike Iranian ballistic missiles still on their mobile launchers. Israel destroyed a significant portion of Iran's above-ground launch capability during that conflict, reducing operational mobile launchers from approximately 480 to roughly 100. Western analysts celebrated this as a decisive degradation of Iranian capability. What they failed to emphasize was that Iran's subterranean infrastructure survived intact. The missile cities preserved enough capability for Iran to continue striking targets throughout the conflict, and, more importantly, provided the foundation for rapid reconstitution afterward. 8 months later, Iranian missile stockpiles had returned to approximately 2,000 systems, close to pre-war levels. The production facilities have been repaired. Large shipments of materials from China have replenished solid fuel stocks. The underground cities that protected Iran's strategic reserve continue to function exactly as designed. The current American assault, with its 900 strikes in 12 hours targeting 500 locations, is more intensive than anything Iran experienced in June 2025, yet the fundamental limitation remains unchanged. American bombs can destroy what they can reach. They cannot reach the infrastructure that matters most. Every Iranian commander understood before the first American bomb fell that the underground missile cities would survive. Every contingency plan assumed that surface facilities would be destroyed and that operations would continue from dispersed, concealed positions that American intelligence cannot fully map and American weapons cannot effectively target. The missiles now striking Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia are being launched from positions that survived the initial assault precisely because Iranian planners expected this attack and prepared accordingly. Iranian strategic doctrine encompasses far more than physical infrastructure. Defense analysts describe Iran's approach as asymmetric endurance, a strategy focused on hardening critical capabilities, dispersing command structures, and accepting initial damage in order to preserve second strike capability rather than trying to prevent all strikes. This is fundamentally different from American military thinking, which emphasizes preventing enemy action through overwhelming superiority. Iran accepts that it will absorb devastating blows. It has built its entire defense architecture around the assumption that those blows will come and that the strategic priority is ensuring capability to respond effectively after absorbing them. The missiles continuing to fly from Iranian territory despite unprecedented American bombardment prove this doctrine is working exactly as designed. The regional dimension of Iranian planning represents another area where American strategists catastrophically miscalculated. Iran's forward defense doctrine, developed over decades, positions Iranian influence and capability outside Iranian borders specifically to complicate any attack on Iran itself. Hezbollah in Lebanon, despite Israeli efforts to degrade its capabilities, retains thousands of rockets and missiles, with half of them within range of Israeli cities. Shia militias in Iraq provide capability to strike American bases throughout that country. Houthi forces in Yemen have demonstrated remarkable resilience and the ability to strike targets across the Arabian Peninsula. This network exists precisely to ensure that any attack on Iran triggers responses across multiple theaters simultaneously, stretching American defensive capabilities beyond their limits. The Iranian response to the current assault demonstrates this multi-theater strategy in action. Within hours of the American and Israeli strikes, Iranian missiles were falling not only on Israel, but on virtually every nation in the region hosting American military installations. The United Arab Emirates received more than 300 missiles, actually more than were initially fired at Israel. Qatar, home to Al Udeid Air Base and Central Command Headquarters, received approximately 65 missiles. Bahrain, headquarters of the Fifth Fleet, received approximately 35. Even Oman, which attempted to broker a last-minute diplomatic solution, was targeted. Explosions have been heard in Riyadh. This is not random violence born of desperation. This is the systematic implementation of a doctrine that assumes American bases throughout the region constitute legitimate targets, and that striking them imposes costs that generate pressure for conflict termination. The most remarkable aspect of this regional escalation is that it is creating exactly the dynamics that Iranian planners anticipated, while apparently surprising American strategists. The Gulf states that Iran is now striking explicitly requested that the United States not launch this attack because they understood they would bear severe consequences. Their concerns were dismissed. Now they are experiencing Iranian missiles striking their territories, injuring their civilians, damaging their infrastructure. The Emiratis have warned they will not tolerate continued missile barrages. Rather than rallying these nations firmly behind American objectives, the attack on Iran is forcing them to experience firsthand the costs of alignment with American aggression. Some may respond by deepening their commitment to the American campaign. Others may calculate that their long-term interests lie in accommodation with a neighbor they cannot escape, rather than endless conflict in service of American objectives. The assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei, celebrated in Western media as a decisive blow against the Iranian regime, reveals another dimension of American miscalculation. Iranian strategic planning explicitly anticipated the targeting of senior leadership. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps prepared successors for top commanders precisely because they understood these individuals would be targets in any major conflict. The religious establishment has scholars ready to assume leadership responsibilities. The governmental structures have redundancy built into every critical function. The Islamic Republic was designed from its inception to survive exactly this kind of decapitation attempt, because its founders understood that external powers would attempt exactly what the United States and Israel have now done. Ali Larijani, one of the senior officials who survived the initial assault, has already emerged as a key figure in the Iranian response. His statement that the United States and the Zionists have burned the heart of the Iranian people and we will burn their hearts captures the emotional reality that assassination produces. Rather than eliminating Iranian will to resist, the killing of Khamenei has transformed him into a martyr whose memory will inspire resistance for generations. The new leadership inherits a nation united in grief and rage, a population that watched foreign bombs murder their spiritual guide, a military and political establishment determined to exact revenge. The strategic calculation that killing leaders eliminates resistance has failed in every historical case where it has been attempted. There is no reason to believe Iran will be different. The economic dimensions of Trump's miscalculation are already becoming apparent in ways that will affect every American household. 20% of global oil exports transit the Strait of Hormuz through waters that Iran has spent decades preparing to deny to hostile shipping. Iranian anti-ship missiles, naval mines, small submarines, and fast attack craft employing swarm tactics are specifically designed to threaten tanker traffic through this choke point. A tanker has already been hit in the Persian Gulf. If Iran implements the strait closure that its doctrine has long contemplated, oil prices will spike to levels that trigger global economic crisis. The inflation already straining American consumers will become catastrophic. The stock market that Trump watches obsessively will crater. The economic warfare that the United States has waged against Iran through sanctions will boomerang as Iranian responses affect markets that American prosperity depends upon. The theological and ideological dimensions of this conflict represent perhaps the most significant area of American blindness. Iranian strategic doctrine integrates religious concepts of martyrdom, sacrifice, and divine mission into operational planning in ways that Western secular analysts consistently fail to comprehend. The supreme leader was not merely a political figure, but a religious authority, whose guidance was followed by millions of Shia Muslims worldwide. The attack on Iran during Ramadan, the holiest month in the Islamic calendar, was experienced not merely as military assault, but as deliberate desecration of sacred time. The response this generates cannot be measured in purely strategic terms. It activates deep currents of religious identity and solidarity that extend across national boundaries and persist across generations. The Shia populations of Iraq, Lebanon, Bahrain, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and communities around the world are experiencing this conflict not as a distant geopolitical event, but as an attack on their faith community by its enemies. The mob that attempted to storm the American embassy in Baghdad, the crowds that Pakistani forces pushed back, the missiles fired toward Cyprus represent the mobilization of religious solidarity that American planners apparently did not anticipate. The war that was supposed to demonstrate American strength is instead generating new threats, activating hostile populations, creating enemies where none previously existed, and ensuring that the consequences of this week's actions will reverberate for decades. The Russian and Chinese dimensions of Iranian strategic positioning represent another factor that American planners underweighted. Iran is not isolated as American strategy requires. In January 2024, Iran concluded a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty with Russia that includes military cooperation. Shahed drones of Iranian design are striking Ukrainian infrastructure, demonstrating bidirectional technological cooperation between Tehran and Moscow. Russia has assisted Iran in upgrading the lethality of its most dangerous ballistic missiles. Large shipments of materials used in solid fuel missile production have flowed from China to Iran. The sanctions regime that was supposed to prevent Iranian rearmament has been systematically evaded through networks of suppliers, front companies, and cargo vessels that the United States cannot interdict without risking direct confrontation with major powers. The Russian naval vessels that participated in joint exercises with Iran in the Strait of Hormuz sent a message that American planners apparently failed to receive. The Chinese naval units operating from Bandar Abbas reinforced that message. Iran has positioned itself within an emerging coalition of powers that collectively reject American hegemony. The war that Trump has initiated does not pit the United States against Iran alone. It positions the United States against a network of relationships that provide Iran with diplomatic cover, military technology, economic alternatives to Western markets, and the assurance that it does not face this confrontation without powerful friends. The claim that American air superiority will be achieved within days, enabling even more devastating strikes, reveals the fundamental delusion underlying the entire operation. Air superiority means the ability to fly combat aircraft over enemy territory without effective opposition. It does not mean victory. The United States had air superiority over Vietnam for the entire duration of that conflict and still lost. It had air superiority over Afghanistan for 20 years and achieved nothing lasting. Air superiority over Iran means only that American aircraft can continue dropping bombs. It does not mean that Iranian missiles will stop flying. It does not mean that Iranian underground facilities will be destroyed. It does not mean that Iranian regional allies will be neutralized. It does not mean that the Iranian population will welcome foreign intervention as liberation. The protests that occurred in Iran in January and February, cited by American officials as evidence of regime weakness, have been completely overshadowed by the external attack. This pattern is so consistent throughout history that it should have been predicted by any competent analyst. Populations may oppose their governments for many reasons. They do not welcome foreign bombardment of their cities as a solution to domestic political grievances. The Iranians who protested economic conditions 2 months ago are now sheltering from American bombs and mourning their assassinated leader. Whatever divisions existed within Iranian society have been submerged beneath the overwhelming reality of external attack. National unity in the face of foreign aggression is the most predictable response in human political behavior. The comparison to Iraq in 2003 is instructive not for its similarities, but for its differences. Iraq under Saddam Hussein had no meaningful deep strike capability against American interests beyond its immediate borders. Iran has spent decades developing exactly such capability and has now demonstrated it against targets across the entire region. Iraq faced American ground forces that could occupy territory and topple the government. Iran faces American air power that can destroy but cannot occupy, that can kill leaders but cannot install new ones, that can degrade capabilities but cannot prevent their reconstitution. The Iraq War, despite overwhelming American conventional superiority, produced 2 decades of chaos and the empowerment of Iranian allies throughout the region. There is no reason to believe the Iran War will produce better results. The swarm warfare doctrine that Iran has developed represents another dimension of preparation that American planners have underestimated. In the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz, Iran has positioned dozens of fast attack craft designed to move in synchronized patterns toward enemy targets, placing radar and air defense systems under severe saturation stress. This tactic enables small boats to approach within effective engagement range against American surface combatants, including aircraft carriers. The IRGC Navy has practiced these tactics for decades. When American naval commanders look at the Persian Gulf, they see confined waters where their technological advantages are neutralized and their vulnerabilities are exposed. Iran sees home waters where it has practiced fighting for 40 years. The intelligence failure that preceded this attack reveals the limitations of American analytical frameworks. American intelligence agencies have excellent technical capabilities for monitoring Iranian activities from space and intercepting communications. What they consistently fail to capture is strategic intention and preparation that cannot be photographed by satellites. They saw the Iranian missile launchers and counted them. They apparently did not see, or did not adequately convey to political leaders, the depth of Iranian preparation for absorbing exactly this kind of attack and continuing to fight effectively afterward. The phrase target of opportunity, used to describe the decision to accelerate the attack to kill Khamenei, reveals a tactical mindset that substituted for strategic thinking. The opportunity to kill leaders became the objective rather than a means to achieve broader political goals. But what were those broader goals? The elimination of Iran's nuclear program? That program is now dispersing to facilities buried even deeper underground. The neutralization of Iran's missile capability? That capability continues to strike targets across the region despite 900 American strikes. The liberation of the Iranian people? Those people are mourning their murdered leader and rallying against foreign aggression. The stabilization of the Middle East. The region is experiencing the most significant destabilization in decades. The Persian civilization has existed for thousands of years, surviving invasions from Alexander to the Mongols to Saddam Hussein, backed by these same Western powers. The Islamic Republic has existed for 47 years, surviving every American effort to destroy it. The missiles now striking Israeli cities and American bases demonstrate that Iranian capability persists, despite the most intensive assault American forces have ever conducted against a single nation in such a compressed time frame. The question is not whether Iran can survive this attack. The question is whether the United States can sustain a conflict with no clear endpoint against a nation that planned for this moment for decades, while American leaders assume that superior firepower automatically produces victory. Trump made a big mistake not because he underestimated Iranian military capability in narrow terms, but because he failed to understand the nature of the adversary he chose to engage. Iran is not a target to be destroyed. It is a civilization determined to maintain its independence regardless of cost. It is a nation that has accepted the possibility of devastating attack and built its entire strategic posture around surviving that attack and imposing unacceptable costs on the attacker. It is a religious community that interprets struggle against superior force as sacred duty. It is a regional power with allies positioned to extend conflict across multiple theaters simultaneously. And it is a state that has been preparing for exactly this confrontation for longer than most of the American soldiers now fighting this war have been alive. I want to hear your thoughts on what this analysis reveals. Do you believe American military superiority can achieve lasting victory against an adversary that has spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario? Do you think Trump understood what he was initiating when he ordered this attack, or has he walked into a trap that Iranian strategists laid generations ago? Drop your comments below. The Strait of Hormuz represents Iran's ultimate leverage point, and Iranian preparation for utilizing this leverage has been comprehensive. The Goreh-Jask pipeline, inaugurated under the Rouhani administration, enables Iran to bypass the strait for its own exports while retaining the ability to disrupt rival shipments. This infrastructure investment demonstrates the depth of Iranian strategic planning, building the capability to impose costs on adversaries while mitigating costs to itself. The naval mines, submarines, and fast attack craft positioned to threaten maritime traffic represent capabilities that cannot be fully eliminated, regardless of air superiority, because they can be dispersed, concealed, and regenerated. The threat to close the strait is not a bluff. It is a capability that Iran has developed, positioned, and rehearsed specifically for use in a scenario like the one now unfolding. The discussion of this conflict ending in 2 or 3 days, with Trump telling Iranians he will see them again in 3 years if they rebuild, reveals either profound ignorance or deliberate deception about the nature of what has been initiated. Iran has been rebuilding capabilities for 47 years despite every American effort to prevent it. The notion that a few days of bombing will produce lasting submission from a nation that has resisted American pressure through decades of sanctions, sabotage, assassination, and now direct military assault is disconnected from every relevant historical precedent. Iran rebuilt after the June 2025 war in months. It will rebuild after this assault as well, with greater determination and with the martyrdom of Khamenei as permanent inspiration. The IRGC, with approximately 150,000 members described as true believers willing to die for their cause, cannot be eliminated through airstrikes targeting headquarters and leadership. Even if every building is destroyed and every commander is killed, these individuals do not disappear. They retain their beliefs, their training, their connections to each other. The assumption that bombing eliminates resistance ignores every lesson from every insurgency the United States has faced. Destruction creates grievances. Grievances fuel resistance. Resistance continues long after conventional military operations conclude. The children of Iran who witnessed this day will carry its memory throughout their lives. They will remember where they were when they learned that their supreme leader had been murdered by foreign bombs. These memories will shape how they understand their nation's place in the world for generations to come. The forward defense doctrine that Iranian strategists developed explicitly aims to fight opponents outside Iran's borders to prevent conflict inside Iran. This doctrine encompasses capabilities that Iran retains for direct use. The anti-ship missiles that can target American vessels throughout the Persian Gulf, the ballistic missiles that can reach American bases across the Middle East and as far as Turkey, the cyber capabilities that can disrupt critical infrastructure in nations dependent on networked systems. Iran's strategy is not merely to defend its territory, but to ensure that any attack on Iran produces consequences throughout the region that make the attack prohibitively costly. The religious and ideological preparation that Iran has conducted within its population represents a form of strategic depth that no amount of bombing can degrade. The concept of martyrdom is not merely rhetorical in Iranian strategic culture. It shapes how individuals understand their role in national defense and their willingness to accept sacrifice in service of larger purposes. The Basiji, a grassroots organization that extends defense beyond professional armed forces, provides a mobilization model that can continue to function even if conventional military structures are degraded. American strategists who view war through a purely material lens consistently fail to account for the motivational factors that enable populations to sustain resistance far beyond what rational calculation would predict. The Iranian diaspora worldwide is experiencing this day with grief that those who have never lived through national tragedy cannot fully understand. In Los Angeles, London, Toronto, and Dubai, Iranians who may have had complicated relationships with their government are mourning the violent death of a figure who represented their nation. Many fled precisely because they disagreed with the Islamic Republic's policies. Yet they recognize that assassination of their nation's leader by foreign powers is not liberation but humiliation. The Iranian opposition abroad that American planners imagined would celebrate is instead processing grief and rage that will shape their engagement for decades. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. Share this video with everyone who needs to understand that the confident predictions of quick victory contradict everything we know about Iranian preparation. I'm Michael Harris. The war that Trump initiated is not going according to script because Iran wrote its own script decades ago. The missiles flying from Iranian territory despite unprecedented bombardment prove that Iran had already planned everything. Trump's big mistake was assuming that American power could override Iranian preparation. That assumption is being tested in real time, and the results suggest that the planning in Tehran was more thorough than the planning in Washington. Stay informed, stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next video.